They use silicone to make it seem like everything is new, fixed, but it's only silicone. And I've gone past that stage of going to conferences to provide silicone. And then after that, we pastors go back and be silly in our ministry. Those of you who know. But I see you. I don't even might know your history, your name. But if you are here because of Him who sent you and called you, then I see you. I acknowledge you. And that's what's really missing also in the church. We don't really see each other. And I'm not talking about, this view with the physical eye. I'm talking about acknowledgement, to know you. I want to first of all show my appreciation to the present pastor of the house, Pastor Rufus, for hosting this conference, because actually you might not really acknowledge what you're really doing by just hosting this thing, because I believe after over 50 years in ministry, I know the value of empowering people, and when they go back, they're never the same again. And whoever they touch, whether their homes, their local churches, their communities, never the same again. But if you pay attention. Therefore, I was saying in my greetings and my acknowledgement, you must take notes down, because this is very important to understand these kingdom dynamics and principles. In fact, because I don't make too much of notes, if you come and see, my notes is all scriptures I've got here. I don't have any additional notes. I don't prepare. It's somehow the other. The notes I etched deep in my heart, in my mind, in my soul. So I don't need even a setup like this to impart. And Pastor George and other pastors will know that even when we're driving, it's a conference together. In fact, I just want to let you know that on my way, a pastor phoned me to apologize that he can't make it. And he thought now he's done a great thing by apologizing and giving me the reason why he can't come. So I asked him, why? Give me the reason. He said somebody died and he has to bury them. And by the time I finished off with him, he was ready himself to be buried. Because, we pastors think that, like funerals are like an opportunity for us now to make a show. I know we do have a responsibility to help and minister, but sometimes our priorities are mixed up. There are times that you can even tell somebody, don't die today because I am going to go and get empowered. Then when I come, you won't hear my message, but your family and those who are living will hear the message. You see? But we think we're doing, that's what God called us. It reminded me that when Jesus asked two people to follow him, one said, no, I just got some oxen, I didn't even try it out yet, so I can't follow you. because I've got to try the oxen out. And I don't know what Jesus told this fellow about the oxen, but I'll tell you what he told the other fellow who said, I've got to bury my father first, then I'll follow you. And the words of Jesus was, let the dead bury the dead. Now these are uncomfortable expressions, and it's a disturbing word in the religious culture and community of the church. We think we're doing a great job by servicing the dead people and having these other meetings, and we don't go to the workshop. And I know for a fact, as Pastor Rufus mentioned, that if your motor car does not go often for servicing and the workshop, you'll have breakdowns. And pastors, I'm still dealing with pastors all the time having breakdowns. And I know they did not service the vehicle spiritually. So there's a reactionary program and there's a pro-actionary program. And South Africa is falling down with all the breakages. It's because there's been a lack of pro-action programs. So everybody is reacting now. We're reacting to ESCOM to fix it. There was no pro-action. They did not service. Sorry, is it okay? You hearing me? So, pastors, I don't know. I don't know if I'm living in my last days or whether this is going to be our last gathering and I'm going to be ministering to you and talking to you and chastising you, correcting you. But pay careful attention, because there's too many examples I can give you of serious breakdowns in ministers' homes, ministers' lives, ministers' marriages, and ministers' local churches have suffered because we don't pay attention. We don't give priority to pro-actionary programs like going and learning how to do something. We are too busy doing things without learning how to do it. We don't give priority to going to school. We don't give priority to going to a workshop. We don't give priority to a program like this to come and get empowered. And then you'll do a better job. So again, I'm still on my greetings really. I want to acknowledge really the founder of Radiant Life Ministries, this household. Yeah. This is just the building. You understand? And I want to also acknowledge the excellence of the setup, Rufus. And you know, it's amazing how when people get married or have their birthday parties, they'll spend so much of money to go out of their way to do something that is eventually breaks down later on. But when it comes to these kind of things, we are wishy-washy. We do it anyhow. People, you know, there's no planning, no setup. So I want to make a mention, that's also good for us pastors to remember. Anything that you do for God, impact with excellence. Give it the best shot. Don't go and cheap. And I thank you, Rufus, and your leaders for this. And I want to acknowledge, as I said, the founder of Radiant Life. Historically, the late Pastor Vasi, his wife Ranji is here, still alive. He was a little boy when I came to Perpetuation to have a, I think it's almost 14-day conference. And in that conference, at the end, the last day of the conference, I made an altar call for those who feel God is calling them. Many young people came to the front. There was an Apple Swami in the front. There was a Bobby David in the front. And many other young people. But one other one that was outstanding was the founder of this house, the late Pastor Basan Gounder. He wasn't married that time. Right, Ranji? In 1976, Pastor Rufus, where were you? I mean, when I'm saying where, I'm not talking about a venue. I'm talking about how old were you? 76, you should work it out quickly. 10 years old. He was 10 years old. And his mother's family, the Lakshmiyas, that we know them as. And there's a lot of history there. Now you saw that, if you look back at the theme, perpetuation. If you want to really serve God, it's a life of perpetuation. You can't take anything for granted, even little children, young men, young women. Some pastors are too big to even acknowledge the youth ministry in their own household. But you want to be a big shot, you want to fly all over the world, but you don't have a legacy, no perpetuation. Too much of impression, putting on an act. Perpetuation through post-generational purpose. By the way, I just met a Pastor Jacob, just like my name is got. Pastor Munyan brought two pastors. Where's the other pastor? Where's he? Went to the toilet. All right, he'll learn to go toilet early, like next time. He came to me. Pastor Jacob came to me and he said, do you know me? I said, no, I don't know. He introduced himself to me. In fact, he says I was a little boy. I think he must have been about 10, 12 years old yourself. When I was leading the song service in a crusade with evangelist Michael Henry in Peter Marisburg in Bombay Road, he came to the 10th crusade. He's here now. Over a pensioner's age now. You see, don't take things for granted. I don't take things for granted. By the way, I'm going to tell you this when I'm speaking of perpetuation. For over 40 years, I still go to junior youth camps. I'm still there. Even if I don't preach, the others will back me up in this. My sons, I'm there because I see the value in perpetuation. You see, you're too busy impressing the adults today. And let me tell you this. There are pastors also advocating to other people, don't waste the money in the church on children. There's a so-called big ministry in Durban that actually teaches and tells the church people, we don't want to waste our money on children. Because children is like an investment without returns. Because they don't bring the money, the tithes. Children don't bring the tithes. And I tell you today, that is one of the lies from the pit of hell. No man and woman of God must have that culture, that understanding. If you, as a pastor, are too big for children, then you're even too big for God. Because Jesus told the disciples, they didn't understand. They didn't understand because they thought now they are the big shots of the movement of Christ. So when the mothers bring their babies and the children, they try to be big shot ushers, push them away. And Jesus straight away rebuked them, forbid them not. Allow them to come, for of such is the kingdom of God. What did he mean by that? He meant that the kingdom of God is perpetuation. It's not when you are buried in that graveyard or put in the crematorium that's the end of your ministry. Your ministry must live long after you leave the earth. I want my people also, if you don't do it right, when you come past my casket, I might wake up and tell you, hey. Or you're driving past the cemetery, you might hear my voice, oh, you still there. Perpetuation, which means a continuation. People are talking legacy today. Guess what they're talking about? They're talking about money. Leaving money behind. They're talking about leaving buildings behind. And by the way, this building is just to accommodate you. In fact, you know what this building is all about? God doesn't live here. He doesn't stay. God is not a caretaker or a janitor. God doesn't live in a building. You are his building. And then, therefore, you've got to allow God to also live in our children. Perpetuation is a continuation. Legacy is not about leaving money for your children. Because that money won't last too long. A rich businessman left so much of money for his son, still a teenager. He took that money, he bought a BMW, what is S3 or what 3 is that? That two-door thing, man. I don't understand how church people can have two-door cars. For what? For you and who? Sorry about that. But I'm not really sorry. He took his girlfriend to impress her on a test drive on the M19, not far away from where I live in Westville. He crashed against a concrete bridge. Both of them burnt alive in the same car. Perpetuation through post-generational purpose, long term. It's not for now. Can't be a pastor for now. I'm sad to say that even the so-called best of forums of higher learning in the ministry, we call ourselves, whether we come from this movement or that movement, even there too they miss this. I believe very, very much in the apostolic, but in some quarters of the apostolic, they've missed the boat too. They are teaching some kind of a reformed theology about parents must look after their children, not us in the church. It's a parent's responsibility. That's true in terms of the parents that are there in the church. But what happens to the children whose parents are not in the house? I really want to acknowledge another apostolic man like Pastor Tamu Naidu. When I spoke one time in his church meeting, church conference many years back, and I spoke to him about the so-called children's church. Because they learned it from the charismatic move. What they would do, they'd make all the adults and parents be in the main hall some way, and they got somebody to put on cartoons and so forth for them, just to keep them busy and occupied. And I went to his church. He had his so-called children's church at that time. When I finished off on talking about children's ministry, the children are part of the church. There's no children's church and adult church. There's only one church. Children must be there. Even in the Old Testament, children observed all the instructions that was given. Then in Deuteronomy chapter 6, children would ask, what meaneth these things? Then the old man in the house will take them down memory lane and say, the reason why we're doing this is because of that. But children in churches today are not growing up like that because there's no connection between the adults and no connection between the platform and the children. That is why, Pastor Rufus, you came to the camp, you saw the children that were little babies. They're on the platform together with the adults. If you want to be in ministry and you got no heart for children, forget it. You'd rather go back, do something else. Perpetuation, a continuation, legacy. It's got nothing to do with living, buildings, land, money. It's deeper than that. Thank God for a person like late Pastor Vasan. He's a good son. You know, I had to give a theme for his funeral. And those of you who were there will remember the theme was faithful father, servant son. You see, as a pastor, you must be a faithful father and be a servant son. Don't worry, Sister Ranji. I know you've been through a lot in a hospital. Your body has taken the beating. But the legacy moves on. Matthew chapter 1, the first chapter in the New Covenant. Let's put that up. I'm so glad you're writing. In the NIV, it says this is the genealogy of who? Jesus the Messiah, the Son of God, the Son of David. You heard that? You read that? The son of who? Son of David. Who was who? The son of Abraham. If you cannot, in a ministry, have a genealogy. Your starting point, where you come from. You must be able to, many years in your ministry, if you're still alive, you might meet someone in the shopping center and they might, a young man might, or a young woman might stop you, whether it's the husband or the wife, and say, "You know me?" And they would say, "No, I can't, sorry. I don't remember. Please tell me." And when they tell you, "No, you took me as a little girl or little boy into your home when I had no home." That's what the mandate is all about from Christ. But no, the enemy, the devil, is still busy. Even up till today. From the Garden of Eden, he's still busy as he was busy then. Distracting us from the call, from the mandate that he's given. Let me say this while I remember, because I have notes here to follow or something like that. As it comes to my heart and my mind, I must let you. If you do not do it right and raise up children, you see, you can have biological children, just like how you do it biologically. You must also have spiritual children. And in a ministry, if you don't do that, you will steal other people's children and call them your children. You will kidnap them. Yes, you'll hijack them. After they learn in another church how to do things, and you see their potential and you see how they can serve and work with excellence, you don't mind. You have no integrity. You'll take them into your house. In some cases, it is okay. You know why? Because those children are really abused and neglected there. Then it's okay. If they are abused. But don't take them when they are corrected by their spiritual father. Because if they break one other house, then your house also doesn't stand a chance. Perpetuation, children's ministry. Yeah, right there. The first book in the New Covenant, New Testament. By the way, I want to acknowledge Pastor Talib and Desiree, all the way from East London. Am I right? My sing clearly. Okay. By the way, while I'm thinking about him, he used to hang around our dilapidated, ramshackle building that we called our church in Chatsworth. And he had friends that came to our church, and he used to hang around them. And cut a long story short today, he is a respected pastor in the city of East London. And then Desiree, his wife. See, you must thank me for your wife, yeah? Yeah. Me and Auntie was in East London, and her family and her mother used to come with her, the little girl, to church when we were there trying to rebuild a church that was neglected. We had to leave Souls Harbour and go all the way to East London just for a few months or whatever it is until we brought another pastor in. And just in that short time, we still have that connection to East London with people from there. And later on, you go there now, And thank God you're here this morning so I can use it as an illustration to what I'm trying to share. Perpetuation. A record. Look at the record in the New Testament. In the New Testament. This is not just Old Testament. In the New Testament. Chapter 1. Starting from verse 1. The principle is right there. But Reformed theologians miss all that. And so-called apostolic people also miss that. A record. Or this is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac. Verse 2. Isaac, the father of Jacob. Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers. Judah, the father of Perez, Zerah, whose mother was Tamar, and so on and on. It goes right through. And you can trace it to Adam. In your ministry, you must be able to have a family tree. Trace it down. And Jesus Christ is the root. You make up the tree, but Christ is the root. So the church in the New Testament, already Matthew sets it out. God inspired him to write this. Some people might go brush past those things and think nothing of it has no meaning, but it's there for the record. Genealogy. You have to have a history and a genealogy. Not just passing trade. You know what I mean? You know, some churches are passing trade. People just come through for demon cases and the pastor is busy. And some pastors are so busy looking for demons. Ghostbusters. We're just talking in the car. I've learned so many things I've learned on my journey. By the way, the book is for sale. It's called A Journal of a Journey. You read that book. It's just a journal, by the way. It's a record of a journey. And it does not contain in detail the principles. It just makes a note of the principles. It's not a book for you to go and study. It's just for you to read and make a note in your mind. It's just a journey. And the other books will come out long after I'm dead and gone too, where it will record the powerful principles that I learned in the journey. Life is a journey full of bus stops. A lot of people don't make use of the bus stops, which is a place of transition. It's a place of transaction. Like those days we traveled by bus. Some people get in, some people get off. Now, it depends on who gets in and who gets off. Unfortunately, a lot of pastors get off in the wrong bus stop. They don't even go to the bus rank to finish well. Some people come into your life and some people get off. Watch out who gets in and who gets off. It's not only people. Be careful what thoughts, what principles, what culture gets in the bus. Wrong culture gets in, will destroy your church. It'll destroy your family too. Watch out. Matthew 1 verse 17 says, thus, there were 14 generations in all, from Abraham to David. Then 14 from David. they exiled to Babylon, and another 14 from the exile to Christ. What a journey. And we call ourselves Christians because we come from Christ. And Christ is not a surname. Christ means the Messiah, the sent one. In fact, he is the first apostle, the chief apostle, who sent other, and by the way, let me talk about this title, apostle. Really speaking, it's not a title. It simply means messenger. Sent one. Sent with a mandate. Verse 11 of Genesis chapter 11. I want to show you something else that happened quite early. Now, the whole world had one language and a common speech. As men moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other. Now watch out for this, sir. Watch out for your company and watch out for the conversation of the company you're in. Be alert to the contents and the context of a conversation. Because a conversation can build you up or it can destroy you. Depend who you listen to in the conversation. Be careful who you go out for lunch with. Be careful who you associate with. Some pastors are bragging on Facebook when they go play golf. Nothing wrong with the golf because the ball is harmless. That golf stick is harmless. You know what I mean? As long as you move that golf stick, the ball moves and goes into a hole. But what can be dangerous is the journey from one hole to the other hole. The conversation can destroy you or can build you up. And that's why a lot of people avoid traveling with me, because I can't help it. I can't help it. And I keep nagging Rufus about when he's going to leave the education department there and go full time. Because he's got so much of potential. So now, here's a story. Long after the flood, God preserves the human race through one man, Noah. And guess who? His family. Only his children there, and his wife. To continue, because the rest were destroyed. Only at least the animals had some decency to get into the ark. Perpetuation. The male monkey told the other monkey, look, let everybody get drowned in the flood. We're going to save our life. Because our generation must continue. But here we are now. In this verse, it says the whole world. In chapter 11, the whole world had one language, one common speech. As men moved eastward, they found a plain and settled there. They said to each other, this is a conversation you've got to watch out for. Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. So they used brick instead of stone. Now, stop there. There's a difference. Watch out for those who are busy making bricks instead of stone. Bricks are man-made. Stone is created by the Creator. So you want a ministry? Don't use bricks. You know why? Bricks are all baked and it's got a pattern that is fixed. You look at one brick, it's the same as any other brick. When a builder picks up a brick, it doesn't tell the helper, no, I don't want this brick, I want that brick. He says, any brick will do. And our churches are full of bricks. But not a stone. And that's why the scriptures talk about living stones. Who are we? Living stones. So in a church, you're supposed to build with living stones, not bricks. Patterned, baked, shaped, same size, fits anywhere. But children are unique. You got to learn early. Children are unique. And they fit in the right place in the house to make up the building. Children's ministry. Perpetuation. Bricks don't last. They said, come, let us build ourselves a city. First of all, before we go there, it says, they used brick instead of stone, and they used tar for mortar. Now, one is a superficial glue to keep the bricks together. They use what I would say man-made chemical mixed with something. They didn't use original adhesive from the ground. So to build the church, you can't use anything that is worldly or carnally. Don't get carnal ideas from the world and bring it into the church. And keep people together. Doesn't work. So, they said, what did they say? Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens. That is self-establishment. A name for ourselves. Let's build a tower. That reaches to them, so that we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth. That's why people who build a tower for themselves, sometimes their churches become the tower. Yeah, the church buildings. And the real church are people, not a building. And we put so much of emphasis on the building. The building is a facility for the main purpose, people. So whatever you build to accommodate people, it must be for the purpose of empowerment, so that everything that the Lord commanded us to do to people. The building is there to accommodate us so that the weather won't disturb us, like the rain or the wind or the sun. That's all. The church is never meant to be a building. And if you know what the original meaning of the word church is, it means people, household. It's not the building. In other words, the church comes to the building. And the church leaves the building. So, where's church? Where you are. Wherever you are. That's why there are many people, they come into the building and husband and wife are perfect couples. When they leave the building in the car, outside parking lot, finished. Church is dead. No church. So let us make a name for ourselves. That's why people try to put up buildings to impress people to come to. And excuse me for swearing now, stupid people go to buildings like that just because of the building. Ask somebody, why are you going there? Hey, that's a nice building. You should see the seats. Cushion seats. Aircon. One person said they're going to a church and they were asked why they're going to the church. He said there's an aircon. And let me tell you something. In some of the most dilapidated buildings are the real church. In some rural areas. I've been to India, no roof, some places. But most of the churches I went to the rural areas, they have palm tree branches that make up the roof. So don't be intimidated by those who got these so-called skyscrapers for themselves as pastors. You in a local house, local village, never mind. I'm not saying stay there, but I found out that when people moved away from a simple tent somewhere in a corner and moved into an impressive building, they lost Jesus. They left Jesus there. Now they're different. Attitude about themselves. They got no time for anybody else. But you must remember one thing. Just like any contractor who is building a building, anyone who is planning a construction, you might have everything in place, but you must remember one thing, the building inspector is coming. What it says here? But the Lord came down to see the city and see the tower that the men were building. I hope I can frighten you a little bit. The building inspector is coming, bro. It's amazing how human beings in construction, they are so particular because there's an inspector that has passed. By the way, let me share this other problem that this happened last week in Johannesburg, Marshalltown area. Now 78 people, I don't know what's the latest, 78 people were burnt to death. Some people beyond recognition. These buildings were neglected. I grew up, even if you had to build a small little thing, the inspector will come to check. You're building according to specifications. Our master builder is coming to check how you're building. Don't think you'll get away. You're going to give an account of how you're building. You can't do some shortcut. Say, no, it doesn't matter. When you're putting the foundation, hey, watch out. Take time with the foundation. Dig deep. And by the way, it's very unimpressive when you're putting foundation. You know that. Nobody will come there and say, what a beautiful foundation. The cosmetic people, and the silicone people, they'll wait for the stained glass windows, the doors. Especially ladies, must watch out for ladies. Don't give them to build church buildings. Excuse me for sharing this. Maybe not all women, but most women, I know. Because it's dangerous to ask them to buy a car. Motor car. Because the first thing they look for upholstery, dashboard. But you lift the bonnet, no engine. Buying a house too. First thing, cupboards, kitchen cupboards. But no foundation. And when the flood comes, when the wind blows, the rain doesn't stand. How many pastors went back to work? Because they didn't build right. Building wrong things. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the men were building. The Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language. In other words, what the Lord decided, these people were speaking the same language, right? He said the only way to sabotage their private motives, confuse them. Confuse them with a language. So that this fellow on the ladder is saying, pass the brick. Now, because of the language, he thought he heard the fellow say, throw me a stone. If it's one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down. Confuse the language so that they will not understand each other. Let's go to Genesis chapter 22. I'm going further now. The angel of the Lord called to Abram from heaven a second time and said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring, children, all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me. Obedience is the number one requirement in ministry. According to the plan, according to blueprint, what God has laid down. And many pastors don't check the blueprint. You know, like a builder who's building, he keeps going to the plan. He looks at, he builds, he looks at the plan. Goes there, checks the measurement, is right, what the plan says, right, he builds. We do not consult. That's the problem. We're too busy copying other people. When they got international flags in their church, you're going and buying international flags and putting in your church. You see another church got this kind of design, you want, but you neglect the children. Because you gave me your son. You obeyed me, you gave me your son. And here's also what you call another area of family is, look, I don't say neglect the education of your children. Let them go for the best if they want to. But if that is all they have, is academics, then you missed the plot. The academics must go along with the prophetic. Children go to varsity and get some beautiful, well-paying jobs, but they know how to be Sunday school teachers, youth leaders. They know in the house how to be hospitable. When pastors send their children to hell and lose out with God's word just to make money, I thank God for my son, Pastor Lucans. He had a very promising future. You know, he could have done a lot of things. He had so much talents and potential. One day preaching about Moses, hearing a voice from a burning bush while I was preaching. He started weeping in the church. And on one hand, I understood what was happening because I had encountered. On the other hand, I thought maybe something was wrong. He was hurting or something like that. But when I saw leaders in my church get up from the seats in the back, while I'm still on the pulpit, my leaders get up from the chairs, and they come up to him and gather around him, and they were comforting him. Later on we found out, after we finished the service, he's quitting his job because God is calling him. And now he's perpetuating our ministry. Be careful, mothers and fathers, don't send your children away to make money. Money will come, and guess what? Money will go. Watch out, that money will kill your own children. I had on this journey from Durban to here, a pastor called me and he told me he can't do this and so forth. And When I was scolding him, he used one word, but there must be a balance, Pastor. You heard that word before. There must be a balance. In the kingdom of God, there's no balance. There's no God and that. There's no balance in the kingdom. It's one-sided. I want you to know that. Either God or you can go for that. You can't say, no, I'll serve God, but I also, what about the other things? There's no balance. Abraham gave his son. The son that he was praying for. The son that he is praying for. Sorry, my time is up, 10 minutes. All right. Can you see how time goes? And actually speaking, we have to have a break. You know why? For you, we have to have a break. So let me round up here for this session. Next session, get ready with some questions also. But really speaking, I'm so loaded here, there's not enough time. All day you sit here. There's so much to share. But there's not enough time. The Lord acknowledged Abraham. When you're talking about perpetuation, Christ comes from Abraham. In your ministry, you must be able to trace your lineage spiritually. You know your biological lineage, who your father's father and grandfather was. But spiritually, there's blockage in the lineage. By the way, let me say, the first 5 years in ministry, your lineage must start. You get married, although some of you don't wait even for the marriage, by the way. All right. By 9 months' time already, when baby is coming. If everything is working, But spiritually, barren. You got church members. There's no such a thing as church members. There's no such a thing as membership. Although the Bible speaks of the body and its members, is referring to the different parts of the body. But it is not this membership thing. Because if you fill a membership form, then you can also resign. And some fellows have resigned from our churches. By the way, lately some fellows resigned too from our church. But they did not fill membership form. But they resigned. How many of you know you can't resign from your father? Can't. Either you're a prodigal son, disobedient, and running from your father, or you in this an artificial relationship. God acknowledges Abraham. Let me close with 1 Samuel chapter 15. This is very, very powerful, yeah? verse chapter 1, 1 Samuel 15:22. The prophet confronts King Saul. Samuel replied, "Does the Lord delight in burnt offering?" All of you pastors must know, you know the story. The Lord told him, "Look here, destroy the Amalekites." In fact, listen, when you're on assignment by God, when He tells you to do something, do it. Sometimes pastors, listen, God might be speaking to you to tell that praise and worship leader, stop jumping and dancing, sit down for 6 months. But because he's a good tithe payer, you leave him. Let me tell you, recently, I had to do this with one of my so-called glamorous, gifted personality leaders in my church. I had to ask him, after I found out he has violated the word of God in his actions, and he was gifted. Now there's a difference between gifting, which is charisma, There's a difference between charisma and character. When I told him to do that, it was too much for him. He walked out. And he took other people with them. And guess how much he took with them in terms of only their tithes? Nearly 30,000 rands. You see, if I don't hear from God myself, I will want the 30,000. And I will keep them there. And apologize. Never mind, you made a small mistake. Stay. But I've been too long on this road. And I've seen pastors do this and compromise. And God sent Samuel after he assigned Saul to get rid of the Amalekites. Watch out for the Amalekites in your church. Everyone comes to church, by the way. You understand? When I say church, I'm using coming to the gathering and being part. Watch out. There are plenty of Amalekites. What God told Saul to do was, tell the Amalekites to fly a kite. Samuel comes. He tells King Saul, does the Lord delight in burnt offerings? Because Saul made an excuse. He kept one Amalekite, the king, and he kept some sheep and whatever else. He's supposed to destroy everything, everyone. No. And then when Samuel comes there, he says, no, I've done everything what the Lord told me to do. But then Samuel says, the prophet, you see, by the way, hey, it takes me to another subject now. There's too much of titled prophets around, But actually, they have no bugger all, really. They call themselves prophets. They want to quickly prophesy over everything. But they know nothing about the whole dynamics of God's kingdom and the mandate of God. They prophesy and say all kind of nonsense. They're more fortune tellers than anything else. And people fall for it. People like that. They love that thing. He was told by God. This is what he must do. So when Samuel comes there, the prophet, is he never intimidated by a king? You understand? True prophets are not intimidated by the president of the country or anybody. Never. True prophets. New Testament prophets are not about fortune telling, you know that? New Testament prophets. Old Testament prophets had to prophesy of Christ coming ahead. New Testament prophets point to Christ who's already been here, come here, is here on earth. All right? But this prophet comes to him and gives him the instruction, have you done what the Lord asked you to do? He says, yes, everything. Then this prophet hears clearly. He says, but I'm hearing the bleating of sheep. Oh, Dad, no, guys told me, no, man, let's save some sheep. You know why? We must do a sacrifice to the Lord. Some people with their sinful life, they will say we sacrifice it unto the Lord. Sinful act of disobedience. Thinking they'll please God. Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the voice of the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice. You know, when you correct people, they say, but I worked so hard. I've done so much. When you correct them. But to obey is better than sacrifice. And to heed, pay attention in other words, is better than sacrifice. Or the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination. You know what that is? Rebellion is like what? Witchcraft. By the way, you've got to be very, very careful in our churches, in our households. There are a lot of witchcraft going on. Any rebellion is like witchcraft. It's a craft by witches, by evil spirits. It's not just somebody disobeying. It's not just like somebody made a mistake. It's witchcraft. Drive it out. And arrogance is like the evil of idolatry. Now comes this. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. As Samuel turned to leave, Saul caught a hold of the hem of his robe and he tore. What does it say in the NIV? The next verse, 28. So Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, and it's given it to one of your neighbors, to one better than you. Disobedience is quite serious. By the way, I'll close right now by saying this, in interpreting this story. You know what Prophet Samuel was telling King Saul? Your dynasty ends right here. No lineage from you. Stops right here. You're going into the operating theater, they're going to cut it. No seed. Dried up. Disobedience will cut your genealogies. Do what God asks you to do. Perpetuation comes from obedience to God. Let's work with children. As we come to the next session after you have a break, think about burning issues that you want to talk about. I'm ready to answer you. Okay, so please, don't come and just, if you see that personally, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid here to say, hey, Pastor, I need help here. Please answer me. What do I do with this or what do I do with that? I've already done this and I've done that. How do I deal with it? Come with the question. Some of you must ask questions for somebody else too. Okay? Would you do that? Okay, go and go to the toilet quickly. Don't take too long.